Welcome. My name is Dr. Brent Haas. I'm Associate Dean and Director of Admission Affairs at the Yenching Academy of Peking University. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. I'll start off with a brief introduction to PKU itself. I'll give quite a detailed overview of YCA's academics, student life, and some data about where our scholars come from, universities and regions around the world. I'll end my sharing session with a overview of application requirements and the timeline and some of the things that we're looking for in potential Yenching scholars. Hopefully that will only take about 35 minutes or so. And then we are very fortunate to have 3 Yenching scholars, alumni and current students who will join us to share some of their thoughts about their motivations for applying to the program, their experiences while they were here, and perhaps a little bit about what they're doing now. Since this is a webinar, you will be able to type any questions you might have into the Q&A chat function. You may feel free to type your questions in at any point during today's presentation, and either one of my colleagues in the admissions staff will answer it directly in the Q&A function, or we will indicate that we'll answer it live. And FYI, please feel free to direct your questions to me or to any of the Yenching scholars who will be joining us and speaking a little bit later. So with that having been said, let's get started. So Peking University is China's best and oldest institution of higher education. It was founded as part of a comprehensive reform movement initiated right at the very end of the 19th century, the so-called 100 Days of Reform. And although this reform movement, under the second to last emperor of the Qing dynasty, is generally agreed to have been more or less a failure, one of the lasting legacies of this was the founding of the Imperial University of Peking, or Jingshi Daxuetang, the predecessor to the institution where we work and study today. You can see an overview, bird's eye photo of Peking, part of PKU's campus. We are located in the northwestern area of Beijing. If you're familiar with our map and sort of the city, we are outside of the northwestern 4th Ring Road. Directly to our south is Beijing's tech hub, Zhongguancun. And directly to our east is our neighbor university, Tsinghua University. And a little bit farther to the east is the Wudaokou neighborhood, which is known as the center of student life in Beijing. PKU's campus is breathtakingly beautiful. Modern buildings, and some buildings that were built as part of a imperial garden centuries ago. The bottom left is Weiming Lake, which is probably the most frequently photographed and perhaps even one of the more scenic spots on campus. Here you can see some of the other shots of our lovely campus. Jingyuan Courtyard is not only a historically and culturally significant portion of PKU's campus, it's also where Yenching Academy has our offices, our administrative building, our teaching building, as well as our large multimedia lecture halls and activity spaces. Jingyuan Courtyard was built in the mid-1920s as part of a former university that occupied this place, known as Yenching University. And although Yenching Academy and Yenching University share a word in the name, and we share some of the same buildings, important to emphasize that Yenching University was not directly related to Peking University. At the time in the early 20th century, PKU was located within the 2nd Ring Road of Beijing, a little bit to the northeast of the Forbidden City. In 1952, when Yenching University closed down, PKU moved its faculty and its students out to where we are today, into this lovely garden campus. It's so lovely, in fact, that Yenching Academy's Jingyuan Courtyard number 3 has been adopted by our now mascot, Fengzhua. Fengzhua is a cat, one of the many semi-feral cats that live on campus and are cared for by a volunteer community of students, faculty, and staff who spay and neuter them, feed them, and update their daily activities on social media. PKU today has over 11,000 faculty members that are divided into 51 different schools and departments, plus 10 national laboratories. The faculty community, as well as the dedicated professional staff, serve over 46,000 full-time students and just under 4,400 international students. We are fortunate to be part of such a reputable, esteemed university. And YCA does benefit from faculty resources and administrative support at all levels of Peking University. So what is the Yenching Academy? Well, simply put, we are a 2-year, fully funded master's program in China studies. We look at contemporary China, its recent past from different disciplinary angles, and understand the changes that have taken place in China's political system, its economy, its culture, its society, what have you, over the last several decades, and how those changes have not only altered people's lives here, but also fundamentally reshaped China's role in the world. Now, I have run the admissions program, as well as been fortunate to teach about 5 or 6 classes of Yenching scholars in history over the last several years. And I personally assure you that those who join the program are really outstanding young scholars. They are curious, they are interesting people, they are interested in better learning about today's China. And we're part of an interesting, I would say, not experiment, but a process of integrating the best practices of interdisciplinary teaching and interdisciplinary research into the already fully formed system of graduate level education in China. And part of that is also defining what China studies means when it's conducted in China. It's something that I find very, very fascinating, and I hope you do too. We are a residential college program, so that means that all first-year Yenching scholars are required to live in the dormitory for their first year. China's scholars from the Chinese mainland and from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan are required to be in the dormitory for both years. International scholars have the option of living off campus in Beijing for their second year. The language of instruction and of education at YCA is English. No prior proficiency in the Chinese language is required for admission. However, if you do have a strong China studies background, if you have a proficiency or close to fluency in the language, I suggest that you emphasize that in your application package. It is not a requirement, but it could in certain situations be an advantage. We encourage our students to branch out of the YCA student and academic community, to join student clubs, to get to know other Peking University students, as well as to take courses offered in other schools and departments. So not just YCA taught courses. For most international students, that will be English language courses. But if you are highly proficient in Chinese, you do have the option of auditing or taking for credit content courses taught in Chinese outside of YCA. Let's talk funding. So the Yenching Fellowship covers your full tuition. It covers accommodation for year 1 in the Yenching Academy House. And if you're an international student and choose to live off campus, you receive a housing stipend for year 2, 3,000 renminbi a month, which will be enough to secure a private bedroom in a shared apartment. But considering Beijing's housing prices and rents, you won't really be able to get an apartment on your own for that amount of money. We offer a monthly stipend for living expenses or necessities, and that's also 3,000 renminbi a month, roughly 650, 700 US dollars, depending on recent fluctuations in the exchange rate. We offer round trip travel coverage. We pay for your trip to and from Beijing in the first year, and we offer basic medical insurance. This is a standard medical insurance for international students living and studying in China. So when you realize we have about 120 students in 1 year and 2 classes of Yenching scholars at any one time, this is a significant financial commitment we're making to the broader community of Yenching scholars. So although you should consider this a 2-year fully funded master's program, you should also be aware that we have an academic performance review at the end of your first year. For your information, all coursework is done in the first year. And at the end of the first year, we do a performance review. And if Yenching scholars meet the clearly defined academic standards, such as completing a certain number of course credits, maintaining a certain minimum GPA, not failing any of your core curriculum courses, you apply for second year funding. And if you meet those standards, you will receive it. We also have other funding opportunities generally offered on a competitive basis, like the Dean's Research Grant for independent research in the first year, opportunity grants for presenting papers at international academic conferences, et cetera. And and second-year language enrichment fellowships for continuing your intensive language study of Chinese or potentially of another language, as well as positions in Yenching Academy in your second year, like TA-ships, residential assistantships, office positions, etc. Now, this is a really important slide because I mentioned we are bringing interdisciplinary research methods and also in the process defining what China studies carried out in China means. And these research areas are how we have been able to fit our interdisciplinarity and our approach to China studies within the pre-existing degree conferral system set by China's Ministry of Education. These research areas will be important to your academic experience at YCA in three important ways. The first, application. The second, thesis advisor selection. And the third, graduation. On the first, when you apply to YCA, you choose one of these research areas within China studies to conduct your master's thesis research. Now, these are still very broad. We all know there are major differences between history and archaeology, or between legal studies and sociology, between economics and management. But you will select one of these, and you should be aware that in the admissions review process, we look at the research area that you've chosen and compare it to your degree or degrees you may have, but also the courses you've taken, internships or professional experience you may have had, papers you've written, publications you might have. And the goal of this, and part of our responsibility as admissions officers, is to make a confident assessment that if admitted, you are trained and suited enough to be able to conduct graduate level research in the field to which you're applying at China's top university. So for instance, if you are interested in economics and management, but you have never taken microecon, macroeconomics, a statistical analysis, well, then that might be a hard sell unless you've taken, say, organizational theory and management and business classes, and you're looking for more of a management focused thesis topic, then that is much more understandable. I want to emphasize, you do not have to apply to the research area that you have a degree in or will soon have a degree in. But be aware that if there isn't a visible connection between your training and the research area that you're planning to apply for, anticipate that we'll have some questions, and please try to address those questions in your application materials. So part two, the research area will affect your selection of thesis advisor. You will need to have a thesis advisor who's an expert in and from a department or a school at PKU in the research area, using the main methodology that you hope to use for your master's thesis. So if you are law and society and you're wanting to do a legal studies research topic, say maybe the reform of the Chinese judiciary over the last 20 years, then it makes sense that you should probably have a thesis advisor from the School of Law. If you are looking at, say, changes to gender relations and family structure in the context of the aging Chinese population, well, then probably someone from sociology might be more appropriate. And then finally, when you graduate, this is what will appear on your diploma. For instance, it will say Peking University, China Studies, Peking University, Master of Economics, China Studies, Economics and Management. China Studies and these research areas are essentially what's considered a second level degree. So your degree will say Master of Economics or Master of History or Master of Law. And then underneath that, China Studies, Economics and Management, China Studies, History and Archaeology, so on and so forth. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the core courses that all first-year Yenching scholars must complete. Those are in the upper left. China in Transition 1 and 2 is a multidisciplinary look at contemporary China. The first semester is organized in large lectures plus smaller breakout discussion sections, and it's co-taught by top faculty at Peking University, generally with modules like a module on Chinese economics, Chinese political system, Chinese society, etc. The second semester of China in Transition, you select one of the teachers who co-taught the first semester, one that hopefully fits your research interests, and then you take a more disciplinary focused look into contemporary China and design an independent field research project under that professor's guidance. Another goal of this course is to give you field research experience before you conduct your research second year for your master's thesis. The field study is a intense travel learning experience that the goal of which is to take learning outside of the classroom and outside of Beijing. We have you do assigned readings, listen to a series of lectures in preparation of our field study trip, which for the last few years has been going to Chengdu in Sichuan province. The China Studies lecture series brings in leading academics, artists, politicians, business leaders to give you a sense of what creative, interesting people are doing within the field broadly defined of China Studies. We've had Xu Bing, famous contemporary artist. We've had the former chairman of China Mobile Telecom Company. We've had multiple leading academics come in and talk at this. It's a great way of highlighting the diversity of this field of China Studies. Then academic writing gives you step-by-step guidance from different PKU professors on how to, say, conceptualize a thesis project, how to design your research project, to analyze your data, to draft your paper and defend your thesis. Now, for all international students, you're required to take Chinese language in your first year for both semesters, unless you have already passed the HSK level 6. HSK is a standardized test for non-native language learners' assessment of their Chinese language proficiency. If you have an HSK 6 that is valid within the last 2 years, you can place out of the Chinese as second language courses, but you still need to fulfill those same number of course credits, and we recommend you do so with at least one content course taught in Chinese. Now, these next two slides are the elective course offerings that are taught by YCA in this academic year, so the 2022 to 23 academic year. One point of emphasis is you can take whatever elective course you're interested in, regardless of what your research area is. So we've just organized these courses according to research areas, but if you are politics and international relations, you are not required. In fact, you are discouraged from only taking courses defined as politics and international relations. If we had such a regulation, that wouldn't be very interdisciplinary of us. And then these are the courses that are offered and broadly defined the research areas connected to the humanities. I'm teaching history of the field, sinology, and China studies from a global perspective this fall. And in the spring, I'll be running the Modern Chinese History Seminar, looking at late imperial and modern Chinese history through a retrospective of the writings of the great historian from Yale who recently passed away, Jonathan D. Spence. Our academic advising system is very unique among top Chinese universities. We have 140 academic advisors drawn from all of these departments and schools at Peking University. Most Yenching scholars will have 2 different academic advisors in their 2 years here. The first year is the faculty advisor. The second year is the thesis advisor. You, through a process of mutual selection, pick your faculty advisor about a month after arriving on campus. Now, this faculty advisor can become your formal thesis advisor for year 2, but we don't think it's reasonable to require students to know who their faculty advisor or who their thesis advisor should be so early on in their academic experience with us. The faculty advisor is there to learn about your research interest, to help introduce you to other faculty who could potentially guide you, and to advise you on integrating into the academic community and perhaps offer suggestions on courses within YCA or in other departments and schools that might be useful for you. Here are a couple of shots from our fall field study in Chengdu, Sichuan province, and a little bit in Chongqing municipality, just southeast of Chengdu, or southeast of Sichuan. So on this trip, because we're going to Sichuan, yes, you get to eat delicious Sichuan cuisine. Yes, we're going to go see the pandas, which is always fun. But we also, this is an intensive learning experience. We learn from urban planners building new districts of the city. We go to a interesting organization that has started a natural disaster early warning system. In a recent bad earthquake that happened in Sichuan, depending on how far away you were from the epicenter, people got 10 seconds to up to 2 minutes of early warning of a major earthquake coming. We go to the Sanxingdui archaeological excavation site, and instead of only being able to go to the museum there, we actually get to go into the excavation pit and watch Peking University archaeologists at work. A really, really wonderful experience, and a very, very rare door that only opens, the rare opportunity, the door only opens for Yenching scholars. In our courses, both in the second semester of China in Transition, but also in our elective courses, we encourage the course faculty to integrate site visits and field research whenever appropriate at our expense. But here you can see the number of groups of students who went on field research trips as part of the spring semester of China in Transition. Our colleagues in the Student Affairs Department, which is Student Affairs Office, which is responsible for residential life, extracurricular activities, clubs, student-run activities, and career development, has been improving the offerings that we have, utilizing the ever-growing network of Yenching scholars who are generally at the early stages in their career, to give advice about, how to position yourself for that perfect next step in your career. One of the new innovations is that we have a professional advising system, mainly drawn from mid or late career leaders in different industries in Beijing, just for logistical convenience. And after graduation, Yenching scholars are quite successful taking the next step in their career, whether it's going on to further graduate study. Roughly 20% of Yenching scholars go on to further graduate study, generally at the doctoral level, but law school, med school, what have you, or moving into the professional stage of their career at international organizations, government offices, consulting firms, you name it. Through our door is a multimedia, cultural, historical, and artistic exhibition that centers on Jingyuan Courtyard number 4, our teaching building. Jingyuan 4 used to be the women's dormitory of Yenching University back in the late 1920s, bringing together archival research, archival photographs, sculpture, artistic photography, oral histories. They worked to bring some of the memories of Yenching, Jingyuan Courtyard 4 back to life, to imbue the space in Courtyard 4 with some of the lived memories of that space. This was a idea that came to us by a Yenching scholar, or an idea that a Yenching scholar came up with, wondered if it was possible to conduct it. We gave her feedback. She built a team of Yenching scholars here and abroad, as well as other Peking University graduate students. And it became a wonderful, really, really impressive exhibition. If you'd like to see the VR expedition, you can scan that QR code on your phone. So Yenching Academy isn't a one-size-fits-all program, and we're not looking for just one profile of ideal applicant. We hope that you think that this is and talk about this in your application materials. This is a platform for you to learn more about China, research China at the graduate level, and find some amazing connections and create something new. That is exactly how the Yenching Global Symposium started in 2016. The first cohort of Yenching scholars had an idea of hosting an international conference focused on China studies and inviting delegates or participants who were at the early stages in their careers. They brainstormed an idea, brought it to our administration, and through rounds of discussion, revisions, came up with something that we funded and has now become really our flagship extracurricular activity. YGS, you can see some of the first 5 topics, is a highly competitive international conference for young scholars and young professionals. Last year's YGS centered around the issue of anti-globalization and the increasing role of nation states and national interests in the international economy, as well as in the international political community. It was a really, really rewarding, really enriching for last year online conference, but it was really, really excellent. And this is, I want to emphasize, conceptualized, and administered by Yenching scholars. Our Student Affairs Office and the rest of our administration offers administrative support, but this is run by Yenching scholars themselves. So over the first 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars, we've had over 850 students join us from 84 different countries and regions. You can get a sense of the regional breakdown of the entire 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars. We are quite diverse. Obviously, there's more that we can do to improve our enrollments from certain regions in the world. We're aware of that and working on it. In the first 8 cohorts, we had students join us, graduates of nearly 350 worldwide universities. What you see here are a list of the universities that have placed the highest number of graduates in our program over the last 8 cohorts. Most Yenching scholars' highest academic degree is a bachelor's degree, but we also welcome applications from and frequently admit students who have other postgraduate degrees, generally a master's degree or perhaps a law degree. So there is a nice spread of academic experience that I think makes for a livelier classroom conversation and the ability for Yenching scholars, potentially even of the same year, to learn from each other. This is the breakdown of research areas at YCA over the first 8 cohorts. You can see politics and international relations and economics and management are the most popular, with law and society being the 3rd most. The humanities occupy roughly about 20% of the total research areas selected by all Yenching scholars. I want to emphasize, this isn't a planned research area breakdown. We don't have quotas. I would personally like to have a more even spread of research areas, but that's neither here nor there, because this simply represents what the best, most competitive applicants in any given year chose for their research area. There is no significant advantage or disadvantage to picking one research area over the other. And in 2022, we had 111 scholars from 27 countries and regions. You can see the regional breakdown as well down to the national level. And we had, of these 111 scholars, they came from 96 universities. And these are the top universities, or the universities that placed the highest number of Yenching scholars in the program. Okay, so the final part of my presentation, application process. We are a fully funded, highly competitive graduate program at China's top university. So we demand academic excellence of our scholars when they're here, and we look for outstanding academic records in potentially successful applicants. But that's not all we look for. We want to know about your life outside of the classroom. We want to know about any extracurricular activities that are important to you, that have shaped your experience, that make you a unique applicant. Have you started your own company? Are you an artist or an athlete, a musician? Are you committed to community service, to charity work? These are things that we want to know to get a better sense of who you are, but also, frankly, to think about how you might be able to contribute to our student community outside of the classroom. And the student community being so diverse and multicultural, we also highly value students with intercultural experience or commitment to multiculturalism or skills at intercultural communication. We are a China Studies academic program. And so we value applicants who have a real strong interest in interdisciplinary study of and research about China. You don't have to be a history major, Chinese language minor on your way to an East Asian history PhD, and then hopefully a life in academia, teaching and researching about China. I just essentially narrated my own path to where I am today. You don't have to be like that to get into the program. If you are East Asian languages and culture major, that's great. We welcome those kind of students who want a research focused or teaching focused academic career in China. But we also welcome students who excel in other academic areas and in other professional endeavors. And at this point in their young careers, realize, I need to know what's going on in my field in China. And so you use YCA as a platform to expand your knowledge base about China, while also applying what you've learned outside of China studies as an academic discipline to your engagement, your intellectual engagement with China. We welcome applications like that as well. And then like any grad school, any job, you need to tell us why, why you're interested in our program, how you can contribute, where do you want to go in your career, and how you think you can, how we can help you get there. Okay, process, application process. So essentially, there are three sort of separate application processes based on one's location and residency. For citizens of the PRC, currently the only route to applying to Yenching Academy is through what's known as the exemption from the National Postgraduate Entrance Examination, or in Chinese, 推免, the 推免 system. Now, this system mandates that you need to be, attending a bachelor's program at a university in mainland China, and through a series of internal reviews like your GPA, your class ranking, and letters of recommendation, qualify for direct application to graduate programs without sitting, pardon me, for the National Postgraduate Entrance Examination. This unfortunately means that citizens of the PRC who do their bachelor's degree abroad are currently ineligible to apply. Then for international students, I'll describe to you the application system on the next slide. It's essentially your standard application directly to us, application form, statement of purpose, et cetera, et cetera. For applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, you essentially have two application systems. You apply directly to the Yenching Academy through our online application system, but also you are required to apply at the same time or slightly later to the Peking University Graduate School application portal for candidates from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. We match up our application requirements, but you must, if you are a so-called HMT applicant, you must complete both of these applications in order to be considered. The basic minimum for consideration for our program is finishing your bachelor's degree by next summer, by the end of August of 2023. Essentially, you can't come to graduate school unless you've already finished your undergrad experience. So the application for international candidates, the standard application deadline is November 7th, 2022, this year. You will fill out an online application form at yenchingacademy.metapply.cn. If you are a non-native speaker of English and you are not or have not attended a degree program, a university or grad school taught in English, then we will need to see an IELTS, a TOEFL, or a Cambridge, a standardized English proficiency test score. If you did graduate or are enrolled in an English taught university, then you don't need to submit that requirement. We need to see certificates of enrollment if you're still from your university registrar, if you're still enrolled, and or diplomas from any degree granting institutions from which you've graduated. We need official transcripts from any undergrad or graduate programs that you have or are attending. We need a personal statement in English, maximum 750 words. Pardon me. This personal statement is your standard grad school application essay. Who you are, why you're interested in our program, how you can contribute, where you want to go in your career, and how you think this will help you achieve it. We also have a statement of research interest, maximum 1,500 words, excluding citations. This is essentially your academic or research-focused introductory essay to the faculty at YCA. It does not have to be a clearly laid out formal research proposal, with a literature review, a formal literature review, a series of research questions, a series of methodologies, thesis, sort of potential conclusions. It can be if you already have a well-formed topic for your master's thesis at YCA, but it doesn't have to be that. It is still a formal academic statement of your research interest using academic language, engaging with academic literature, a body of secondary literature or bodies of secondary literature, or perhaps questions or debates into which you want to wade with your own thesis research. It can be maybe about a couple of potential topics, but be careful of spreading yourself too broadly and therefore not being able to give the necessary depth to show us, what we want to use for this requirement is through engaging with your writing about research, we want to understand how you conceptualize, approach research topics, and how you engage with academic literature and identify potential contributions that your own research can make. Need your resume or CV, and we need 2 letters of recommendation. These must be academic letters of recommendation, and they must be from associate professors, full professors, or higher. Now that is pardon me. That is a standard requirement for top graduate programs in China. We are unable to adjust that. So they must be academic, and they must be from associate professors, full professors, or higher, or the equivalent. Perhaps you're on the lecturer, senior lecturer, professor level, then think of it as senior lecturer or professor. So these are the requirements for international applicants. Now the requirements for those applying from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. 3 differences. Most of it's the same. First, the application deadline is a little bit later, and we have to go by the Peking University Graduate School application deadline. I suggest that you get your Yenching Academy application in by our deadline, November 27th, but the PKU one is generally a little bit later, and they haven't yet announced that. So that's one slight difference, the deadline. The other slight difference is on the Certificate of English Proficiency. If you are a graduate, if you have already graduated from a university or graduate program taught in English, then your diploma from that institution certifies in the eye of the university that your English is sufficient, and therefore you do not need to submit an English test score. If you are currently enrolled but have not yet graduated from an English taught institution of higher education, then you still need to submit a Certificate of English Proficiency. And then the final distinction is the letters of recommendation. The level of professor, associate, or full professor, the same. They must be academic, but for applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, your letter writers must be from the field to which you're applying. So China Studies, Economics, and Management, you need a sort of economics and management focused professor writing your letter of recommendation for you. Why are there distinctions between what HMT applicants and international applicants must submit to us? Well, because what we've done is we have slightly adjusted our application, our required documents in the application package to match up with the requirements of Peking University's graduate school application portal for candidates from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Okay, that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at yca-admissions.pku.edu.cn. Go to our website. Please go to our website. Do your research on the program. Look at our faculty. Look at how we structure our curriculum. And also look at the profiles of current Yenching scholars. I think you will be able to see the diversity of backgrounds. And I don't mean regional or cultural or political backgrounds. I mean educational backgrounds, what people have studied, their internship and professional backgrounds, what work have they maybe done before coming here, and then what they're working on while they're here. And I hope that doing so, you'll realize once again that we aren't a one-size-fits-all program, and we're not looking just for one profile of successful applicant to our master's program. Then you can see us on the standard international and Chinese social media. So I appreciate your patience and your attention, and of course your interest in the Yenching Academy. I am now going to turn the floor over to the Yenching scholars who have joined us today.
My name is Gregor. I don't usually start presentations with a massive picture of myself, but such is the destiny of the Yenching scholars. Maybe first a little bit about myself. I was in the 5th cohort of Yenching scholars, so from 2019 to 2021. I was able to stay on campus the first half a year and did the second semester of my first year remotely then, and the second year obviously also remotely when I also started doing internships elsewhere. I'm Czech and German. I grew up in Prague, but I did my undergraduate degree at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. My degree was there in international relations and Chinese, which was already quite heavy on Chinese language, and already maybe an approach to interdisciplinary study of China, since there was also availability of different courses from different disciplines. And even though I had this international relations focus, I, for example, did my BA thesis on Chinese film. Also, I listed here a couple societies that I joined. I think the interest in China spread for me also in other activities. I used to do a bit of music before university, and at SOAS I joined the Silk and Bamboo Ensemble. Some of you might be familiar with ensembles like that, sort of traditional Chinese folk music, where I started learning a little bit of the pipa as well. Same with the Sages, a band we started there based on the Seven Sages of the Bamboo Grove. Some of you again might be familiar, and a Chinese percussion society. So I began. So I would. This is not. As I think Dean Haas has highlighted, this is not the rule, but I already had a growing background in China before applying to YCA. I also started working part-time with a program called China Hour in the UK, which was a channel on Sky TV, which shares Chinese broadcasts in the UK. What I did was also film brief documentaries about events or places reflecting China-UK relations. So I was able to travel to China during my undergrad at London as well, to places that I hadn't been to. I had a year abroad while I was doing my undergrad at Beijing Normal University, during which time I also visited the Peking University campus. And I think Dean Haas has shown sufficient evidence there that I was quite smitten with the campus. And then I'll speak a little bit about what drew me specifically to YCA and how I experienced it there later. But maybe just in terms of work and internship experience, just during YCA, I also worked on the Yenching Global Symposium executive committee. I was doing design and branding, but unfortunately in my year, due to the pandemic, it was cancelled because we'd been preparing an on-site event. But it still was, for me, great experience. Again, a slightly different activity. So I've been doing a little bit with media. There I was able to do more in design. And it's also helped me then to start a YCA public relations assistant position, which similarly to TA positions in your second year, you're able to do with the YCA office. And ultimately, I left that position for an internship with the German Agency for International Cooperation, which I then did while doing my thesis in my second year. That ultimately also became my position, which I have today in the same team. I work with the Sino-German Cooperation on Low Carbon Transport with GIZ China. My focus is in sustainable urban mobility, freight and logistics, decarbonization of transport, maybe more broadly, which were definitely not topics I worked on during my undergrad or at YCA. But it was specifically courses at YCA or individual lectures at YCA that allowed me a little bit of background when I was applying for these positions. We had, I remember specifically, for example, Dr. Yu Kung-tian from Turenscape, an organization that tries to use traditional agricultural methods in China to create green spaces, or these so-called sponge cities that make cities also more resilient to flooding. A lot of interesting stuff that, as I recall, spanned from the lecture series that Dinas talked about to CIT as well, the China in Transition courses. Environmental topics sort of popped up, and I think that's what built up my maybe a launch pad for a position in low carbon or environmental cooperation. I'll maybe move on to the next one because I have maybe a few more courses to mention on this. But as for my motivation to apply for YCA, it was specifically the interdisciplinary approach that I found most appealing. when it was, since I'd been doing most of my studies within China, but also with international relations from in regions outside of China. I also did classical Chinese during undergrad and Chinese film, which then became my BA dissertation topic. I knew that I would want the politics and international relations focus, but I didn't want to lose the other aspects. And there were still other topics that I was curious about with China. So that approach at YCA, as I think we heard this in the previous presentation, was very strong, and that's what appealed to me. The PKU facilities, as I said, I had visited the campus, and it really is. It really was beautiful, especially I think our building I liked a great deal. So simply for just the environment where you could study, that to me was a great motivator. And also the compulsory language courses, I have to say. Since I had done about 4 years in my undergrad of Chinese, and I had the year abroad, I was quite fluent when I arrived at YC, but there's always room for improvement with Chinese. So I was quite happy to have the language courses be compulsory. But I also took at least one. I think I audited one, and I took one other course in another PKU faculty that was taught in Chinese relating to international relations. That exchange with other PKU faculties, I want to highlight again. We've heard this mentioned today, but that was one thing I'd heard about YCA before as well, and I found it really to be true when I came, that YCA is very well integrated into the rest of the PKU faculties. So there's a lot of exchange with you can take courses as we heard in other faculties, and I really enjoyed that. I definitely took advantage of that in at the beginning of my my first semester especially. The duration for me was also quite helpful, because I didn't quite know what I would want to jump off to directly in the year after YCA. So the fact that I could take my second year, work on my thesis, and do internships, maybe in other topics as well, that to me was a relief in a way. And I knew that I would either really dive in very deeply into my thesis through that year, or find other focuses. I think I was able to balance a little bit between the two. My experience at Yenching, I've nothing to complain about. I'll probably be a little too nostalgic if you permit me, but it really was a very diverse curriculum for me. I took philosophy courses and history of art, although my focus was then politics and international relations. I remember my first semester I also took a legal course, because I would end up with a Master of Law with my concentration. So to explore legal topics as well for me was relatively new. And those courses, I think it's helpful to highlight that the workload is definitely graduate level, I felt, but even there's definitely topics that or courses within YCA that expect that you might be entry level in some of these. If it's an area you're only newly experiencing or exploring, I felt you can definitely start with a completely new topic, which I had done with at least 2 or 3 courses, and then found them quite intense at times, but really rewarding, very well taught. The top professors and lecturers that we had. I'll also probably just be repeating what Dean Haas has said earlier, but for one, since I knew that ultimately I would like to remain with the politics and international relations focus, I picked my faculty advisor, Professor Yenching, very quickly, and he was also my thesis advisor. Subsequently, he teaches the theory and practice of China's foreign policy. Fantastic course, I felt, and for me also a very, very supportive and strict and demanding, but ultimately very well guiding supervisor for your thesis. I can definitely recommend him as well. But the other scholars, as you've probably seen from some of the introductions, they're really fascinating people, very proactive. The backgrounds in education are especially interesting to me as well. We had people who had no background in China, but knew that they might want to link their background with it a little more, so that some who'd done biology, others who had done purely classical Chinese studies as well. So there's just a breadth of interest to varying depths relating to China that you can explore there. And generally it's a very, very active, very lively student body. I felt when we were on campus in person, we had a lot of societies also pop up and be very active. I joined Yenching Greens, which I'm not sure if it still runs today. We'll maybe hear from a later alumni. But that was a society where we then organized weekly presentations from people working in environmental climate in Beijing, including some former Yenching alumni. Which again to me was very rewarding when I then applied for internships and positions relating to climate cooperation. The Chengdu trip, I probably also would be repeating a little bit, but I really loved that as well. I hope you'd be able to go to Chengdu yourselves as well for this, precisely because there were different aspects to the trip, different disciplines that were explored as part of the trip. My highlight was, I think, definitely a lecture with Peter Hessler. If you've got some background in China studies, I'm sure the name will be familiar. The individual and group research trips, I remember in planning, was also something that the other students that we worked with on topics that when we were preparing for Dean research grants, and what everyone has ideas of what to study, of where to go, what to do. So I think there I can only encourage you, if you join Yenching Academy, be open, be very proactive with the other students as well. I thought our group was planning a trip to Yiwu. Ultimately, due to the pandemic, obviously, we're not able to realize the trip itself. But I've heard of plenty of other sort of Dean research trips in previous years as well. I wonder if maybe Teresa would have something also to report herself on this. But yeah. For me, very exciting times. What maybe in the interest of time, because I'm not sure if I'm not going over, you might have to let me know by audio, is the on-site facilities for me were fantastic as well. I can again highlight foods. As I think Dean Haas has mentioned, the canteens in Peking University are as sublime as the views. You'd be able to eat fantastic food for very cheap, as I recall. But the teaching facilities is what I would highlight especially. I think of the entire campus, and as a Yenching scholar, you are likely to take courses in other parts of PKU as well. But I do find our buildings to be some of the most beautiful, and very high level, very clean. Everything is whatever you can, it was digitized. So the on-site facilities were great, and I hope this in the future will no longer be necessary. But I also felt, especially speaking to other students from other friends from other universities, that our online teaching was very well coordinated, very early on, and very actively followed up. I have to say, even in the second semester, I think things for us went as well as they could have. My thesis title, otherwise, that was China and Global Development Governance, Motivations for Increasing Multilateral Engagement. I'll just put that there. Through some of the courses from foreign policy to Professor Harway's retrospect and prospect of China's, was it, I think, China and Global Development. I became, I sort of tied the interest in environmental cooperation with development cooperation, which I would assume is probably how I ended up then that what I do now. I felt again for that Professor Zhang Qing in my thesis advisor was very helpful. The resources that we got for this were also very interesting. And if I'd have to suggest a specific course, if you're interested in development, I'd recommend Professor Harway's course, because it was also very practical. As other professors, you know immediately that you're being taught by top people in their own field. Professor Harway, there's also a lot of experience with the UN. And in the course, when I say it was practical, it's not just in terms of what work with international intergovernmental organizations in development would entail, but practical in how to get into these organizations as well. We had a session where we had his former colleagues from the UN come as well, and we went through sort of dry runs of job interviews. So extremely helpful, very, very encouraging, I think, for me as well to try and enter this field, which I'm happy to have done with the German Agency for International Cooperation now. And I think I definitely owe a great deal of debt to YCA in my preparation for this. I'd probably just leave these questions. We've heard them, I think, before here for a little bit. Things to consider when you are applying. To avoid repeating everything that Diaz has said, I would maybe for myself just highlight if you go through some of the backgrounds of different Yenching scholars and you see what other activities they've done outside of a China focus or outside of their own studies, that is something that really inspired me also to be open about my interest outside of my studies. I felt preparing a graduate level application, you definitely want to be very strong on your academia, very clear in your academic interests and your background. But in my interview for YC as well, I was able to openly talk about my acting prior and during my university, which is something I did for close to 10 years and something I enjoyed, and it was I felt welcomed with interest. And any other, if you have a musical instrument, or as Dina said, a sport that's really your passion, and it's not directly related to what you think would be your focus at YCA, highlight that, be open about that. I think that's something that that's very welcomed at YCA, and that's why the community at YCA I felt was also so interesting, with people really excelling in all kinds of different areas. Okay, I feel now it's been at least the 10-15 minutes. I'd wish you best of luck in your applications.
So thanks so much, Gregor, for sharing. Teresa, are you ready?
I am indeed, Brent, and I hope you can see my slides now.
We can see your slides, yes.
Excellent. Relaunching the application helped. Now I cannot start my video, but I guess this one's better than before. So let's go with the slides. All right, so a little bit about myself. My name's Teresa. I am part of the 3rd cohort of Yenching scholars. So I arrived at campus in the fall of 2017. My concentration is among the 2 largest ones, as the numbers just showed, economics and management. And currently I'm based in Frankfurt and now working in strategy consulting. So just a brief overview of the agenda, and I'm going to try to keep it brief indeed. So we have at the end, preferably some time for your questions. So I'm going to start with my experience prior to YCA, then go into a little bit more detail about my specific motivation to apply, then talk about my Yenching experience, and finally suggestions to applicants. So my experience prior to Yenching Academy, I completed my undergraduate studies in Tübingen, Germany, as well as Beijing. So I completed 2 undergraduate degrees at the University of Tübingen, one in International Business Administration and the other one in Sinology or China Studies. So part of my undergraduate studies also took me abroad. Among others, I spent a whole year already studying at Peking University during that time. So my connection to China actually goes back somewhat further, because I grew up in between China and Germany. My family was living in Shanghai for many years during my childhood, which indeed laid down the seed for a never-ceasing fascination and connection also with China. So this just as some additional background. I've also had some extracurriculars during my undergraduate time, mostly also related to student or research assistantships, and also some practical internship and work experience while I was in China. So going to my motivation, first and foremost, I think the Yenching Academy offered for me personally a great continuation of my academic path, because it was offering me to combine my my great interests and research interest in China with my my business major as well. It offered me the opportunity for full immersion in China because I was sure that I wanted this for my master's degree. On the one hand, because I am I have already conducted primary research during my undergraduate, and I really wanted to take this approach with me to China and conduct research in China on the ground. So this was important. And on the other hand, also to really bring my Chinese skills up to a level of professional working proficiency. Yeah, another factor was similar to what Gregor already outlined, a return to Peking University with its beautiful campus. And finally, I think the interdisciplinary approach of the program really appealed to me. And because I find that discussing developments and problems in an increasingly globalized world requires an interdisciplinary viewpoint. So these class discussions are probably some of the most eye-opening and informative ones that I have had in my entire life, because you have classmates from all over the world with different academic backgrounds. So a very big diversity of opinions, a very nuanced picture that we've been able to paint and able to see during our studies there. Finally, the inspiring and brilliant classmates from all over the world. And I have to say, this is probably also now part of my Yenching experience as a whole. This kind of enables you to create a network and create these meaningful connections that will indeed last you a lifetime. So moving on to my Yenching Academy experience. So this page here is mostly an overview of the academic experience. My research overall at Yenching Academy was focused on new energy vehicles and the development of the new energy vehicle market, specifically in China, as it is the most mature market in the world to date as well. I've laid the foundation for this research already during my undergraduate research, so this was a pretty straightforward continuation for me. However, I have been offered the opportunity at Yenching Academy to also pursue my interests in many different and many other directions. So I've written, this is just an example. I've written a research paper on ancient Chinese bells, which was at the same time my first ever paper that was solely based on Chinese language sources. And with one of the research grants that also Brent mentioned before, I have been able to write a paper on the impact of China's new foreign NGO law on the development of the Chinese NGO sector, which was based on a series of qualitative interviews with people on the ground, which is exactly also part of a big part of my motivation for why I wanted to be in China for my master's. Aside from this, the courses, we are able to select courses from different schools at Peking University. So I was able to pick together my very individual curriculum, which consisted of partly courses from the Guanghua School of Management, but also School of Economics, and some were organized and offered by Yenching Academy itself. Much like Gregor, I also decided to take a course here that was taught entirely in Chinese, and with me also being the only non-Chinese student in the room. So I think what is also really important about the Yenching experience is that it offers the chance to get involved not just with your classmates and the Yenching community, but also with the wider Peking University community. And I think that is not to be underestimated in its importance as well. Going on, I have dedicated a separate slide to my extracurricular experience, because I think that looking at the academic part in itself is only a part of the picture. So I was, same as Gregor, also involved in the organization of the Yenching Global Symposium as a co-director of logistics. We were fortunate enough that it was possible for us to implement the event in person in 2018. Aside from this, I have used my second year for internships with the German development agency GIZ in China, where I've also had the chance to contribute to the Sino-German electromobility cooperation project. Also based on my interest and my thesis research that has led me to open conversations with people working in this field. So to talk a little bit about my involvement with Yenching, I was a residential advisor in my second year at Yenching Academy. This is another position aside from teaching assistants or office assistant positions for second year students. So I continued to live on campus. And at the same time, I also received support from Yenching Academy, a grant to support intensive language studies at the Stanford Tsinghua Inter-University program. I think the overall message that I really wanted to get across also by sharing here this part of the experience is that Yenching Academy offers a great variety of opportunities and also a great deal of freedom to every scholar. So everybody is free to shape their experience and is free to really make of it what you want this to what you want this to be for your career, for your academic path. And I really enjoyed this. So this leads me to my final slide, suggestions for applicants. I think overall your application should address two key questions. The first one being why Yenching, and the second one being why you. So why Yenching? What and how could Yenching Academy contribute to your own academic or professional journey? And that also includes why do you want it to be in China? Why do you want this to happen now? And I've met a lot of people who've had this China focus present in their profile, much like with my case, but I've also seen people who have never been to China, who've never had this connection with China, and who really wanted Yenching to be a big pivot here in their CV. And so this is also something that you can make a case for, and you should make a case for. A second point being why you, and this also ties in with this diversity of profiles. It's about what you can bring to the table and how you can enrich this next group of Yenching scholars. And that can be through your own specific experience, and also maybe hobbies of yours that you don't think have any connection with why you want to apply. I think when it comes to what to expect from Yenching Academy, I'd like to repeat what I said earlier. It really is what you make of it. So my only recommendation would be, whether you have been to China or not before, to go in with an open mind and an eagerness to learn. This is by far the most important thing. And then again, Yenching Academy offers this huge variety of opportunities. You will have so many chances to branch out into different directions or to deepen your already existing focus topic. So this is really a unique position and a unique opportunity that is offered here. So also from my side, I wish you a very, very best of luck with your applications. And do not hesitate to reach out to me via LinkedIn or also via email. I'm very happy to support and to answer any other questions that you might still have.
All right, Teresa, thank you very much. So we have Stefano Castelli, who's going to join us now and share some of his thoughts and experiences.
Thank you. So that's me. I'm Stefano. You can see a very professional picture of myself on the left and a very regular picture of myself on the right. And today, I think that I would bring a slightly different perspective to this panel, as I'm a current scholar at Yenching. And as a matter of fact, this is just the 6th week for me as a Yenching scholar. So I'm part of the 8th cohort, so I will be doing this program from 2022, so last September, up to June 2024. But going a bit into my background, I'm actually originally Italian, and as differently from the other alumni today, I spent there most of my life, right? So I didn't get the chance since early on to really get to discover and learn about China. For my undergraduate degree, I moved to Belgium, where I did a Bachelor in Business Administration at the KU Leuven. It would be interesting to see if any student is here today from the university. And there I also got the chance to do an exchange program at Tsinghua University during my 3rd year. Now, unfortunately, as you might imagine, and probably as most of you here today, over the last 3 years, the people of my generation didn't have the chance really to enter China, even if that was really a desire of ours. And even with this exchange program, I didn't, in fact, have the chance to go to Beijing as I was constrained online. That obviously, besides the amazing experience, even confined in an online environment, left me with a sort of sense in dissatisfaction, right? And that was certainly one of the reasons for me to apply a YCA. Nonetheless, it is important to mention that Yenching Academy program is certainly much more comprehensive and a much better opportunity for you for professional development than a simple semester exchange. So going briefly on my professional background, during my undergraduate, I had the opportunity to do a few internships, including strategy consulting at Deloitte, Amazon in the UK, and an e-commerce startup in Spain. So it kind of follows, right, that at Yenching Academy, I'm following the major of economics and management, which I also hope will sort of guarantee my continued development after my postgraduate studies into the business environment, perhaps strategy consulting or entrepreneurship. nonetheless, it's key to mention here how I'm not doing the Yenching Academy for this primary reason, but rather to get a different perspective on a number of other disciplines. I think that as Dean Haas and also the other panelists mentioned, there is a great opportunity for you to take different courses, Yenching, and even if I'm currently majoring in economics and management, this semester actually the core part of my electives are from the law and society track, and I think this evidence for you as evidence that you can really go and discover the topics that are better suited for you. During my time at YCA, I intend to research cross-border investment between Chinese and Western entities. And since I started, I was already able to narrow down a bit the focus into the Chinese bioscience industry, which is currently sort of developing in a very interesting way, and also the venture capital effect on the wider economy and the role it can play within this industry and cross-border investments. On this regard, I think it's also important to mention, going back to the possibility of taking different courses, that actually this semester I'm following a course on venture capital evaluation offered by Gango School of Management, and that also acts as evidence for you that you really have at YCA the possibility to exploit the full Peking University resources and network for your own development. So my current status, as you can see, unfortunately, this is not my regular background, right? But I had some connectivity problems this morning, so I had to move somewhere else. But I've actually scheduled my visa appointment last week, and I'm counting on being in Beijing by the end of December. So I will be probably one of the latest scholars this year to arrive in Beijing. And as a matter of fact, I can testify to you that most of my peers, students are already there and they're already living the full experience. So definitely looking forward to that. Moving on, is the slides. Why is that? Yeah. My motivation to apply YCA, it certainly comes from the eagerness to do new experiences, particularly in China, and meet new people. I don't want to repeat what's been said already during this panel, but the people you will be studying with and learning from at YCA are really the best alumni out there, and you will not have the chance to sort of work together within such a team if you do not participate in the YCA program. Also for me, learning Chinese was a very important pivot of applying a YCA. Differently from the other panelists today, I didn't have the chance to learn Chinese before, but I can already tell you that even starting from the ground at YCA with Peking Resources University, you really have the best environment for you to start learning the language and becoming proficient in the least amount of time. That being said, if you're already proficient, I think the other panelists already made the case for you still, as you should still come here and intensify your language program. Moving forward, you also have the chance to build your program, right? And I think this point was stressed enough, but as this is a European focused panel, I think that for many of us coming from undergraduate or postgraduate experience in Europe, the teaching method is very much the old academic style, right? Unless you're in very specific programs or really specific universities, perhaps from the UK, you really prompt towards end of semester exams, memorization, so on and so forth. Whereas in China and particularly YCA, the focus is more of a continued development and continued progress in your studies. I think we can call it continuous assessment method. And that really makes you develop more as a person. It's very important for your future employment. And it makes you feel more part of a group, right? So that was also a key point. And as we also mentioned before, new research opportunities, right? You can really narrow down your interest in China and pursue your field research once there. So to move a bit faster so that we can have a bit of time for Q&A at the end of this session, my experience as a Yenching scholar so far has been brief, right? But that being said, still, I would say a full and exhaustive experience, and I'm certainly eager to move forward into the program. The diverse curriculum, the amazing fellow scholars, and incredible field trips are a key part of your experience at YCA. And very important to mention here also the access to the best academic network in China, as well as the opportunity to experience China from your own perspective and not the one of someone else. And this brings me to my latest slides. The other panelists today already presented something similar, but what I would like to stress here is, especially if you are like me, who didn't have the chance to go to China before and is really keen on participating in this program, make sure that you stress the point on why China, why is it important for your own present and future development, as well as why China now. So obviously the pandemic here will play a major role in your motivation, right? But why do you think at this time it's important for you to go to this new country? And last but not least, don't forget to mention any interdisciplinary experience that you had throughout your development so far. And that being said, I think I can close my presentation here and leave the floor to the Q&A.
Then I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's information session. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us. Stefano and Gregor, who have already left, I would like to thank them as well. Thank you for Akil, for your great question, and thank you everyone else who's joined us live for today's webinar, and perhaps those who are watching a recording. We hope to see your applications coming up in a couple of months, and at YCA, we would like to wish you the best of luck in that endeavor. Please stay safe, healthy, and sane wherever you may be, and we're going to sign off here and now. Thanks so much.